Someone you love is going to die. You already know this. Somewhere in the back of your mind, you've always known it. And when it happens, you'll probably do a handful of very specific things. You'll gather with others. You'll mark the moment in some way. You might cry. You might speak their name out loud. You might place something near their body. You'll call it grief. You'll call it a funeral. You'll think of it as something civilized people do. But here's the thing. You've been doing this for a lot longer than civilization has existed. The earliest known deliberate burial is roughly 130,000 years old. That number is almost impossible to hold in your head. Agriculture is about 12,000 years old. Writing is about 5,000. But your ancestors were already burying their dead, carefully, intentionally, with objects placed beside the body more than 100,000 years before any of that. Think about it. Before we had cities, before we had language as we know it, before we had almost anything we associate with being human, we already had this. In 1908, archaeologists uncovered a Neanderthal skeleton in a cave in Chapelle-aux-Saints in France. The skeleton was old, not just ancient. The individual had been elderly, with severe arthritis, missing most of his teeth. He could not have survived alone.
Someone had been caring for him, and when he died, someone placed him in a deliberate pit, in a specific position, in a cave that archaeologists now believe was used as a burial site. He wasn't abandoned. He wasn't left where he fell. Someone chose to put him somewhere. Weird, right? We used to think ritual behavior was something that separated us from every other species on Earth. Turns out, the line was never that clean. But why? Why did your ancestors do this? Why did they bother? Anthropologist Paul Pettit has spent decades studying mortuary behavior in early humans, and what he found rewrites the story we tell ourselves about death. He argues that the act of burial wasn't primarily about the dead at all. It was about the living. Specifically, it was about managing something that might be the most destabilizing force a social group could face: the sudden absence of someone who was supposed to be there. Your ancestors lived in small groups, tight ones, 15 to 50 people usually. Everyone had a role. Everyone was known. When someone died, there was a gap that the group had to close, not just practically, but psychologically. The body created what researchers call a social emergency. Something had to be done with it. Something visible. Something shared. That's what ritual is. Not magic, not superstition. A shared action that gives a group of people something to do with an experience that has no good response. The oldest grave goods tell this story in quiet, devastating detail. A child buried in Kafsa Cave in Israel, roughly 100,000 years ago, was found with deer antlers placed deliberately over its body. Red ochre, a pigment, stained the bones of early humans buried across Africa and Europe, suggesting their bodies had been painted. Flowers, or at least pollen, was found with a Neanderthal burial at Shanidar Cave in Iraq, though archaeologists still debate whether the pollen arrived by human hands or by wind. But the pattern is unmistakable. These weren't accidents. These weren't people who happened to fall next to objects. Someone put those things there. Someone made a choice. And that choice required something your brain does that almost nothing else on Earth can do. It required you to understand that a person was gone. Not hiding, not sleeping. Gone. Permanently. Irreversibly. Never coming back. Psychologists call this theory of death, the cognitive ability to grasp that death is universal, inevitable, and final. And according to researcher Philippe Rochat at Emory University, this awareness might be one of the defining features of human consciousness. Every culture in recorded history has developed ritual around death. Every single one. Not because they were taught to, but because something in the architecture of the human mind demands a response to absence. Your ancestors didn't bury their dead because they believed in an afterlife, necessarily. They buried them because they couldn't not respond. Because leaving someone you knew just lying there, unacknowledged, unmarked, unmourned, felt wrong in a way that was deeper than language. It felt wrong before they even had a word for wrong. But here's what changes when you sit with this long enough.
We tend to think of grief as something that happens to us, something we endure, something we get through and then move past. We talk about stages, about timelines, about closure, as if grief is a problem that needs solving. Your ancestors didn't see it that way. They couldn't afford to. In a group of 20 people, losing one of them meant losing 5% of your entire world. There was no therapist, no support group, no insurance policy, no replacement. There was just the group and the gap and whatever you could do together to keep the group from falling apart.
The ritual was the solution, not to grief, but to the gap. It said, this person existed. We marked their existence. We will continue. Anthropologist Robert Hertz, writing in the early 20th century, described death in many traditional cultures not as a single event, but as a process, something that happened over time through the actions of the living. The body was a symbol. The burial was a statement. The mourning was a bridge between who the group was and who it was going to become without this person. Nothing about that has changed. When you gather with others after a death, when you tell stories, share food, sit together in a room, you are doing exactly what your ancestors did in a cave in France 100,000 years ago. You are closing the gap. You are performing the ritual that says the group continues, that the absence, as unbearable as it is, will not break you. There is something in you that already knows what to do when someone dies. Not because anyone taught you, because it was shaped into you over a span of time so vast that civilization is just a thin layer on top of it. You've been burying your dead since before you were human, as we define it. And every time you grieve, every time you gather, every time you speak their name, every time you place something beside someone you've lost, you are doing the oldest thing your species knows how to do.
Someone you love is going to die. And without thinking, without being told, without reading a manual, you will know exactly what to do. You always have.
If this video meant something to you, share it with someone grieving, with someone curious, with someone who needs to be reminded that what they're feeling is as old as humanity itself. Like this video if it made you see something differently. Subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next, because the next question is already waiting. And drop a comment below. Tell me what you think. Tell me what you felt. Tell me what you want to explore next. This channel exists because of people who stay till the end. So thank you. Genuinely. See you in the next one.